Welcome everyone to my channel Web Dev Wise. In this video, we'll continue to develop the CRUD operations using the authentication and token generation. In the previous video, we created a REST API to create the users and we encrypted our password. In this tutorial, we are going to create one more REST API, get auth token. In this REST API, we are going to generate the token out of the system. Once we get this token, we will validate and create another REST API to create to-dos, and we will use the authentication token to get the data into the system. So on your screen, you can see we created a to-do with the help of the token which we generated. All the code which we are creating just now is going to get uploaded on my GitHub page. The link for the GitHub page will be down in the description. You can go and refer to that. So let's go to our application and see what exactly are we going to do. Since we are going to work on token generation, let's create one more API route. It will be a get route, async, and it will receive the request as a parameter. Then it will be an arrow function. Underneath this, we have to get the try catch block created, and we know the drill. We have to return next response from next server.json, and then we have to pass on the error as the message. So it will be error message, and then the status will be 500. In the try block, we are going to perform 3 steps. First step is to validate the details provided by the user. The second step is to validate whether these details exist in the system or not. And third thing is to return back a token if everything looks fine. So let's get started on that first. I'm going to get the auth details from the system. Request.headers.get, and then we are going to focus on the authorization token. This is the key which we are going to receive in the headers. Once we get the auth details, these details will be coming as base64. So we have to convert these details back to a string so that we can do manipulation on it. Let's convert this base64 data back to a normal string. What we have done here is we got the encoded string. The encoded string contains a space in between, so we need the next part after the space. So we splitted that. After that, we created a buffer in base64, and then we converted this buffer to a UTF-8 string. Once we get this string is nothing but a username and password separated by a colon. So we again splitted the string based on the colon. We get the username and password out of the authorization header. Now what we are going to do, we are going to use the controller methods which we created in previous video. The method name was getToken.js. In this method, we receive email and password. So we are going to pass email and password. This method is going to validate whether the email exists in the system or not, and whether the password provided is matching with our database password or not. If everything looks fine, we are going to get a token for 24 hours. I'm going to show you how this token can be validated online, and then once this token is generated, this token also gets stored in our auth token model within our database. Let's call this method in our route.js file. Const token result equals to await generate token, and then we are going to pass username, password. Ideally, it should be email. Once we pass on these details, then we are going to return next response JSON token result. We have to convert this to JSON. So we are going to say token, and then this will be our result. Give this a quick save, and let's go to our Postman to test this API. So I've got my Postman open. The route which we are going to follow is API get auth token. In the authorization, what we have to do, we have to select basic auth, and in the username, we have to pass the email address, and in the password we have to pass the password. Once we do this, all these details will be created as a request header. If I go to the headers tab, and on the top you can see authorization key is added and a basic value is added. This is what we decoded in our code from base 64 to a string. So this string is a username and password string converted into base 64. Let's hit send and see the response. On the bottom you can see a token is generated. This token is nothing but a JWT token which contains the session details. Let's copy this token and validate whether everything is looking fine or not. You have to head back to jwt.io website and you have to paste this token to understand it more. So this is the jwt.io website. On this website, what you can do, you can paste your encoded token here, and in the secret on the right hand side, you have to pass your JWT secret. Once you pass your secret, you should be presented with all the details like the user ID associated with this token. The user ID is 2. The issue time. This is the issue time for this token. The expiration time. This is the 24 hours after the issue time. So that's how this token is generated and it will remain valid for next 24 hours. Let's head back to our database as well and validate whether a token entry can be seen or not. So this is our database. In the database, we have got a schema REST API YT. We have got 3 tables, auth token, to do and users. In auth token, we should be able to see the latest token. At the bottom, you can see a new token is generated just now. Let's head back to our code and try to create CRUD operations based on this auth token. To perform CRUD operations, we have to head back to a new route to do. So in the earlier video, we created a route to do and underneath we created a route.js file. This will be our main route for performing CRUD operations. Before that, we created a utility method, or you can see the controller method todo.js, where we created multiple methods to interact with the database. Create to do, get to do by ID, update to do and delete to do. So all these methods we created in our previous video. So the very first thing which we are going to do in to do model is we have to post some data so that we can get it later. I'm going to create one method, export const post. It will be an async method request and it will be receiving the details. So I'm going to create try catch block and I'm going to return next response.json. It will be error message status 500. In the try block of to do, we have to follow 3 steps again. First step is to validate the token which we received. Second step is to extract the user ID from the token, and based on the details provided by the user, we have to create the to do. Let's do that one by one. So to get the token details, what we can do, const token equals to request.headers.get authorization token, and then once we get the token, we have to get the JSON details as well. So JSON data which is coming as part of the body. Now we have stored token and JSON data. Let's extract the user details from token and then post this JSON data back to the controller. I'm going to create a variable const token validated. It will look for a method validate token. Underneath we have to pass the token details. Once we get the validated token, we have to create another variable to do result. If we get the token validated dot user ID. So if we get the resultant out of this, then what we have to do, we have to do the results and we are going to await for create to do method, which is nothing but a controller validated dot user ID comma JSON data. Once we create the to do, we should be able to get the response and then we have to return the response as next response. To do is to do result and status is 200. Give it a quick save and it should all be working. Head back to your Postman. Let's validate the post method. Now I've got the route to do. I have to change the method as post. In the authorization, we have to select API key. And in the API key, we have to pass the key as authorization. And in the value, we have to pass the token which we just received. So copy this token and send it across. Once we paste this token, we have to go to the body section, select raw and select JSON. Two things which we have to pass: title for to do, test to do 1, and the status completed. I am going to say false. Hit send and see the response. Create to do is not defined. So let's see what exactly is wrong. We selected the method, but we didn't import that. So let's import this method. Give it a quick save. Go back to your Postman. Hit send again. And you can see a to-do is created with the ID of 1, test to do 1. Let's head back to our database and see whether a to-do is created or not for the user number 2. In the to-do table, let's query that. You can see a to-do is created in our database for the user ID 2. One key thing which we missed right now is validating the schema details. In the previous video, we used Zod for the schema validation, and I'm going to use the same code for validating to-do schema. Let's do that very quickly. Now what we have done here is we have created a schema, to-do schema, with the help of Zod. It is an object with 2 fields, title and completed. It is running in strict mode. That means anything apart from title and completed will not be entertained. And then we have created a function validate to-do schema, where we are parsing the data which we are receiving as a JSON. If we get the error, then we beautify the error and send that as a JSON response. And in the main post method, we are just simply passing the JSON data to validate to-do schema to get the validated JSON. Give this a quick save and let's head back to your Postman to validate the errors. If we try to misspell completed, let's see what happens. Hit send, invalid schema. What could be the reason? I should have selected the to-do schema while validating the to-do schema. Give this a save. Let's see whether we are able to run our restapi or not. Send. You can see a new to-do is created. If I try to misspell anything, we'll get an error. Unrecognized key in the object completed. One more thing which we have to implement here is the next response in the error section. Let's do that from the previous code. I'm going to copy everything, paste it directly in the cat section, save it, hit it again. You can see the error message is coming beautifully here. Unrecognized key object completed. Let's try to add one unnecessary key. Again, unrecognized key as test. Let's create a get method to get all the to-dos assigned to the user which is requesting the token. In this method, what we are going to do, we are going to simply use this data which we just received, copy the token validation, and then if everything is looking fine, then call the method which is going to return us the data. The data name is get to do by ID. Get to do, get to dos. In this, we have to pass the user ID as your input, and we are going to return everything as next response, to do's, to do result, and be done with it. Next thing is we have to add the catch block. We have to wrap everything in the try catch block. The error message I am going to copy from above. Format this really quickly. Give it a quick save and let's see the results. I have changed the method as get, hit send now. Token validated is not defined. So it should be this one. Copy this, below this, save and run. You can see all the to-dos are appearing here. The to-do number 2, to-do number 1, all these details are appearing beautifully here. But what if I want to specifically filter a to-do based on the condition completed as true? What we can do, in the parameters, we can add a key completed and we can say true. Try to hit send. Nothing has changed because we have to understand in our code how exactly we can get these parameters and how we can validate these parameters in our code. Let's go back to our code and then use these details and return back the results. In the get method, to get the param details, what you have to do, you have to create a variable URL. It will be a new instance of URL which will take request.url as a parameter. Completed be url.search parameter. So what we are doing here is we are creating a variable completed, and here in the URL variable we are searching for a parameter completed. If completed equals to true, then it is becoming true. The parameter which we receive is always a string. That's why we are validating it against a string and converting that to a boolean. Else completed will be false. Once we get this variable from the system, in the get to dos method, we have got another parameter called completed. The spelling of the above ones is not correct, so I'm going to change it. Give this a quick save and try to run our REST API again. Completed is true. Send. You can see only one result is received where the completed status is true. If I try to change it to false, then you can see only one to do is received, which is false in nature. All this is coming from the database. That is the beauty of this entire mechanism. Now, what if you want to update a specific to do? For example, this ID1 to do, if you want to update this, how you are going to do this? To perform this, we have to create dynamic routes in the system. I'll give you an example. To update a specific to do, what you have to do? You have to go to API to do and to do ID1, and then you have to run the patch method. To perform this operation to a dynamic route where IDs are keep on changing, we created one more route in our code. Let's head back to our code. If you remember, we created this square brackets ID and underneath we created route.js. Whatever the code we are going to write under this route.js, this will work for the dynamic routes. I'm going to use almost all the code which we have written previously. Let's copy everything from here. And we are going to change a few things here. So we have written everything. Firstly, we have to change the method to patch, which is for update. And then we have to add one more parameter called context. This context parameter allows you to select the variable coming from the URL specifically. The method name which we are going to change is update to do. And then let's focus on context variable which we just received. In the update to do method, we have to pass context number context.param.id. So this ID folder which we just created is going to store under this context.param.id, and we are going to pass this ID into our update to do method. If I go to update to do method, this receives ID, user ID and to do data. So we have to pass the user ID as well. Token validated.user ID. Give it a quick save and let's head back to our REST API. I have selected one number to do. This is the system ID. In the authorization, I am going to pass the API key, and in the body, we are going to send raw JSON. Title, I am going to change the title. It was originally test to do 1. I am going to change it to test to do XX. And I'm going to hit send. Cannot read properties of the unidentified ID. It should be params. Give it a quick save. Hit send. You can see the to do 1 got updated with test to do XX. Nothing got changed. The update date also got changed. If you can see, the creation time is different from the updated date. Let's head back to our database and validate everything is looking fine to us or not. In the to-do table, I'm going to query it again. You can see we have got test to do XX. Let's try to change the status as well and validate everything is working fine or not. Completed as true. Hit send. And there you have it. You have got the true as your completed. The last method which we are going to focus on is delete. What if we select delete for a specific ID? It should delete from the database. Let's write down the code. In the same dynamic route, what we have to do, we have to create one more method, delete. It will be async request. And then again, we are using context. I am going to copy the code from above. We are getting token, we are getting JSON data. We don't need JSON data right now because we are using ID from the context. Validate the token. JSON validated is not required. In to do result, we are going to say delete to do. In delete to do, we are receiving user ID and user ID as the parameter. Go back and ID and user ID we are passing. We have to remove the JSON data validated from the parameters. Give this a quick save and try to run this. In the delete method, if I select ID1, hit send, you can see we got a response ID1. If we try to delete it again, invalid invocation because it does not exist. It is not found. If we try to give any random IDs here, it will check in the database whether this ID exists or not, and you will get data is not found. So that's how you can perform CRUD operations on your REST APIs. Hope you are finding these tutorials useful enough. If you're liking our content, do subscribe to our channel. It really helps to us. Thank you.